Sean Rickard, but can I just press you? You say that everyone must put their house in order. There's got to be a complete recalibration of what's going on. What on earth do you mean by putting a house in order, or should I say a farm in order?
Well, just look at it in general terms. If an economy is developing, it's growing at about 5% a year. That is making people better off. There is no possibility of small-scale farmers growing at that pace. So the recipe you're talking about is the rest of the economy develops and farmers keep poor. This is what has dogged us in Europe and America for years. Farmers have complained because they were more or less held back. Governments at first tried to support them, eventually ran out of money. It's much better to let the market work.
Let's check with Sarah. For you as a farmer, and you're representing farmers here, small farmers in Sri Lanka, do you benefit from rising prices? If the prices are going up in the markets in the developed and developing world, are you better off because you get more money?
Not at all. Now, who is trading? If the world market prices go up, if the prices that can be got from exports go up, the farmers don't benefit. Even now, last month or 2 months ago, food prices in Sri Lanka increased more than twice, not 40%.
And how much of that has gone into your pocket?
Well, practically nothing. Now we are harvesting, and now the big traders in Sri Lanka and globally have seen to it that they buy the produce of the farmer at very low prices. Therefore, there's a sudden drop for a very short period.
Right. Well, can I just pick up that point with Jan Kees Vries from Unilever? Because you have a view that actually extra income from increased prices will gradually trickle down to the farmers. He's saying, from his point of view, rubbish.
He's saying it's not happening.
That sounds like rubbish to me.
It's not like rubbish.
Okay, he says it's rubbish.
I think that if you look at what globalization is doing to consumers, what globalization is doing to consumers is that consumers no longer rely on food that comes from the farmer they know around the corner. It doesn't no longer come from a small greengrocer in their village. It comes from all over the world. And people are beginning to care. Consumers are beginning to ask us questions. Unilever, where do you get your raw materials from? And if we can show a story, if we can show a supply chain that actually begins with a community or a cooperative or small farmers, that has a benefit and has an emotional value to consumers. And I see absolutely no reason, but the organization of the chain, I see no reason why companies like Unilever could not buy more directly from farmers without traders in between. Traders in between always have as a result, and India has been heavily researched on that issue. As consumer prices went up, farm income went down. The reason for that, the traders in between. They're the ones who make the money.
We'll come on to that in a moment, but Madam Munkosi, do you believe that rising prices will help change attitudes to agriculture and food policy? Is that central to what the World Bank hopes will happen?
I think so. I think that because rising prices, as everybody is saying, is not something that is going to go away in the short term, because there are supply constraints that can be quickly overcome. We have to look at it because it's going to change the way we look at the whole issue of hunger, the whole issue of malnutrition, the whole issue of small farmers being able to feed and support themselves and their families. And I think that we should also avoid sweeping statements. I mean, you've got to differentiate. There are places where small farmers will not be benefiting. There are other places where they might be able to benefit. And I think the whole thrust is that where I want to disagree a little bit on whether small farmers will go away, we must remember that 75% of the world's poor live in rural communities, and most of them are farming. The idea that they can go away very quickly is not possible. So the issue is, how do we support those farmers in a way that will give them better access to markets that they're not completely cut off, in a way that they're not able to benefit from any of the changes?
But at this point in our discussion, can I just be absolutely clear, and Sean Rickard, as a business economist, any advantage from rising prices? We hear that it's rubbish. He doesn't get any money in Sri Lanka and his small farm. You believe that rising prices will fundamentally help change food policy?
Look, I can't sit here and claim a great deal of knowledge about Sri Lanka. What I know is that food prices, it's really not food, it's agricultural prices that are rocketing up around the world, and that is going directly to farmers. What's the problem with that? Farmers will waste a lot of it. They'll spend it on land, they'll push up their own costs, and in 3 or 4 years' time, they'll be saying, oh, we can't make ends meet. We've seen this over and over again. We should really separate fundamental trends, which we've discussed, from, of course, short-term effects. Every 10 years, you see rising food prices, we see the effect going to farmers, and then more land comes into production, and it goes down again. The truth of the matter is that we have to separate a cycle, and normally the farmers do gain from higher prices, but that's the problem. It's a short-term gain. I absolutely agree that there is a big problem with them getting themselves into market. And I'm also very skeptical of large food companies who now start talking about localized food. You've realized you might be rather short of food the next few years, so you're beginning to turn towards farmers to help you. But you didn't care for the last 10 years.
Correct.